Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to a Rescue Michigan live stream. And I am not at my usual location today, so apologies. There may be some audio video issues. I've been having telecommunications problems all day long, so hopefully things go well. But welcome, everybody. We got a big panel tonight from the state convention yesterday in Flint. I think the first ever we've had a Republican convention in Flint. And man, is there a lot to talk about. So I don't even know where to start, but welcome, everybody. Hey, Maggie. Hey, Patty. Hey, Amber.
Hey,
Matt.
everyone.
How you guys doing?
Long time no see.
Yeah, that was... I feel like every convention I've been to, I've said this is the worst run convention ever, and it just keeps getting worse. So I don't know.
I think it was that badly ran. That was fine.
Well, we got out of there. Well, I managed to book it and get out of there at like 8 o'clock, which, you know, it's only a 12-hour day, which seems like a long time to just have to nominate a few people. So I think that was a bit cumbersome. I think a few things could have been done to make things go faster, but well, I guess the big thing is the Disruptors got wrecked. So that's probably, I guess, the place to start. There's other news as well. The nominees, we'll talk about that. But I think
we can start with Rob's question.
What's that?
From YouTube. It says, who was that butthead in the blue shirt? That's a good place to start.
Okay.
His name was Bob Blackmer. He's from Oakland County.
Yeah. So this guy.
North of 8 Mile.
Yeah. So yeah, that guy getting arrested. He when Pete Hoekstra was talking, he just started screaming and screaming. Mm-hmm. And this is after the Disruptors have already lost multiple rounds. They were fighting over the rules. They were fighting over the credentials. They tried to overthrow the Kalamazoo delegation, and they lost all of them. And then when I forget, I don't even remember why he was talking, but Pete Hoekstra is talking, and this guy, and actually the guy next to him also, just started screaming and screaming. And eventually the chairman of the convention, I have no idea why Dave DeShaw was the chairman of the convention, but he was, but asked if the guy's a credential delegate, and he's not. He's a guest. So he's like, all right, we'll get him out of there. They took like 15 cops to get him out of there.
They just kept coming.
Yeah. Well, at one point, the sergeant at arms, or one of the sergeants at arms, turns to me and says, we need cops here. And I think he's talking about like the event security people who are armed themselves. And they're like, no, we need to get the real cops here. So then I go outside where the real cops are. I'm like, hey, real cops, come on in here. And they're like, no, hold on. We're waiting for more cops. And so then a second car of cops comes, and then finally like these 15 of them come to haul this guy out. And in that clip we saw there, which Shane Trejo got, by the way, thank you, Shane. I actually was, he got taken, like I was at Tom McMillan's table. I was working for Tom McMillan. I was at his table, and he got to Nikki's table, which is like Nikki Snyder's table, is maybe 30 feet further than that. And that's when he started resisting arrest. So he got a trespassing and a resisting charge. So there you go. Good job, man. You really represented your disruptor kooks well. But I think there's more story to that story than I know. And I think maybe either Scott or Matt or Maggie, you guys know some of the story behind the story on that. So enlighten me, because all I saw was people trying to be disruptive, but there was more of that. So
yeah, I talked to one of the sergeant at arms who was there, and he was in some of the pictures there. But with Bob Blackmer, and apparently he had a guest pass, and he was in the alternate section. So the guests were supposed to be in the second tier up above, and he was in the alternate tier. And he was, like you said, he was just screaming and raising ruckus, so much so that he obviously caught DeShaw's attention, who was chairing the meeting.
yeah.
And he was just being obnoxious. Apparently that morning on Facebook, he had put a whole bunch of scripture and talked about how God was going to do a work or something in the convention, and I think he did, but not exactly the way that he expected it.
Yeah.
And so but I thought that when Dave DeShaw said, if the adult having a temper tantrum up there, is he a guest or is he an alternate? And when it was told that he was a guest, he says, "Get him out of here, Sergeant. Get him out of here." And so and I think DeShaw ran an excellent meeting. He did a really good job. I think the people. I was in the 9th, and so I was surrounded by the doers, and like Rob says, he was more than generous. And I think that swayed a lot of people. I saw a lot of people sway because when the vote came up for to adopt the rules as they were and go on with the meeting, it was, from what I could tell, it was even like 90%.
Yeah, they didn't have any numbers at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, how was it for the rest of the votes? Like, we were kind of in the front third of the room, like, so I couldn't tell who was standing for the disruptors or whatever you want to call them.
Well, the rules, they somehow got the rules to require everything be done with 2/3 votes, but they didn't even have majority. So they were trying to appeal the ruling of the chair all the time, and they didn't.
But I couldn't tell. I mean, I just saw a few people standing in front of us, and I didn't know who behind was, what it looked like for the eye, But if he could, I guess, if he determined it, like visual, then it was pretty obvious they didn't have it, right?
I must say, I agree with all you guys and all of your praise about Dave DeShaw until it came time for round 2 of the voting.
Oh, that was bad.
That's when we discovered that something very strange had happened, and so apparently,
I didn't
get there. Let's go
through. Do a recount.
Let's go through. Can we just, for the benefit of the viewer,
chronology of
talk about there's two. So there's 2 types of disruptions here. Okay. So first, there was the procedural disruption, and for the benefit, please, of all your viewers, please know that Robert's Rules does not overrule the rules of an organization. Okay. So if you buy a share of General Motors stock, you do not get to go to the shareholders meeting and go, Robert's Rules, point of order, and get to take over the company and kick Mary Barr out. You do not get to do that. The company sets rules. If the company doesn't have a rule, that's when Robert's Rules apply. So some people who have been doing this for a long time, like Dan Bonamy, Phil O'Halloran, Kim Harris, they walk up and they say, but Robert's Rules. Dave DeShaw takes a piece of paper where he's already written this out because he expects this and says, here's where in Robert's Rules it says, if you have a rule to the contrary, Robert's Rules doesn't apply. So while you think you need half, you need 2/3. Thanks for playing.
Yeah.
They didn't have half. They didn't have 2/3. They didn't have any. They had some small percentage. So that was, what do you say, Patty? An hour? Did that go on for like an hour?
An hour and a half.
I think, I think that portion of the convention would have maybe taken a half an hour had there been no disruptions, maybe. So it was 2 hours. So that I measured that in my metrics of an hour and a half lost time times 3,000 people. That's a lot of man hours.
Yeah, but this is not the first time that Phil and Dan and Kim have gone to a microphone and have attempted to disrupt a meeting and make their arguments about rules. These people know exactly what they're doing. The goal is to disrupt the meeting, so to encourage delegates and alternates to leave because they have instructed their people to stay and vote for the issues that are important to them. So they know exactly what Robert's rule says. They know that MRP rules, GOP rules for the party are the overriding rules. They know completely well that Robert's rule is there for supplementary purposes. Their role is to disrupt. That is it. And once you understand, when you understand their lay of the land, it is expected that's what they're going to do. You can almost script their arguments because you know what they're going to say. I mean, that's the game they play.
Yeah.
So to be surprised by it, I mean, I wasn't. I mean, we all sat there and laughed and said, "Okay, here we go for another 2 hours."
Right. Yeah, I was surprised it was an hour and a half, quite honestly, because before it was like 3 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah, it could have been even worse. But yeah, there was a point where when they appealed the ruling of the chair, when the chair had ruled that no, Robert's rules does not overrule the orders of the convention. I mean, they were expressly arguing that we should break the rules. That's what they were doing. Because what their argument was is, no, we're going to appeal the ruling of the chair who rules that the rules of the convention don't apply to us. I mean, that's what they did. Every single one of them that voted to appeal the ruling of the chair was voting for disorder. That's what they were doing. I mean, they're disruptors.
But that is their plan.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Yep.
That is the plan. And then you had the guy who spoke first. I think his name is, I could be wrong. So if I have it wrong, I apologize. But the first person to speak, David Chandler, he was the maybe 6'2" guy standing back. You know, I think he's an ex-Marine, standing there with his arms folded, kind of looking over everybody, you know, like he was an enforcer.
Yeah. Was that the guy who I was just calling the angry Chaldean guy? Is that who you're talking about?
No. He was the guy who made the first motion that wanted to remove Pete because we, the delegates, you know, he would, you know, we're the delegates. We get to pick the chair. Yeah. You know, and I think I'm the one in the audience. You can hear me saying, "Hey, can we finish reading the call for the convention?" I mean, you don't even know what you're doing. But it didn't matter. He had a script. Chandler was supposed to go up there. This is what he was supposed to say because he wanted to get the delegates all worked up to say, yeah, we get to pick the chair. You know, the guy hadn't even finished reading the call of the convention. And what are you doing? I mean, he looked like a complete fool. They don't care if they look stupid, idiotic, out of control. They don't care. All they care about, how long can we extend this meeting to get our delegates and alternates in place to vote for our people. That is the goal.
Yep, exactly. And the funny thing was, I don't know if he was one of their men or if he just was a loose cannon, but then angry Chaldean guy, after they lose a bunch of motions, he moves to adopt the rules, which was the thing that we were trying to get done in the first place. And funnily enough, the entire week, there's all this disinformation going around to all the delegates saying there's a secret plan in place and they're trying to do yada, 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 and yada, yada, and we need to fight for the rules and blah, blah, blah. And before the convention, every single candidate, except for Alexandria Taylor, who's a Democrat, every single candidate had signed an agreement saying we will support the rules as written. And that was going to be the play, was for them to say, all of us, except Alexandria Taylor, want to support the rules as written. And then they didn't have to because the disruptor guy just, I just move, we pass the rules right now. Okay, sure, let's do it.
Yeah, he's actually got a pretty long and sordid history. He's been at a Northville school board meeting where I was there, wearing a body cam, threatening people. I think he was at a Plymouth Township.
He came to a Plymouth Township board meeting once. It might have been about the Myers.
Right, and he's been very close to being arrested several times, and he doesn't quite get it. That you can't go in, and he was threatening board members. I'm gonna get you, whatever. And like, man, you can't do this.
It's just scary. Like, that is very scary behavior. And I was thinking about that afterwards, about, you know, like kind of sitting ducks in that stadium, Because we didn't have metal detectors necessarily. Like, that's scary.
Yeah.
I reached out to someone. It was their first time at a state convention. I'm like, so what are your thoughts? You know, blah, blah, blah. And he did mention security. He's like, and I noticed he wasn't sitting on the floor. Not thinking back, I'm like, you know what? He was sitting up top. He didn't come down on the floor. We were we were stuck in there.
Yeah.
And it was hot.
Well, I mean, there was, I mean, at least the security was armed. And in fact, one of the guards showed me he had actually 2 handguns. He had one that was open and one that was concealed.
Okay.
And I'm glad because, man, yeah, I mean, James Chapman was right there when that guy was getting pulled off the floor. And
Well,
he was James Chapman.
And so was the other guy. And so let's talk about that for a second.
He
Yeah.
flipped me at the bird.
All right, so I got to
Me
roll his
too.
sleeves up. So he is probably 30-ish feet from me. I'm on the aisle of the 6th. Directly to my left is this lunatic who starts having an attack. He starts screaming and yelling. Ah! At one point he said, "Hoekstra's a pirate." A pirate?
Pirate.
And I said, "Does he have a ship? Does he have like a cannon?"
Oh my God, he should wear like a patch next time.
I mean, it was
I
like
heard that.
it
That was
like
awesome.
Brick from
That should be,
from
you should
Anchorman.
embrace that.
Yeah, I mean, he was just going crazy. So next to that area is the 6th alternates, which includes the ball kicker and convicted attempted murderer that spent 10 years in jail, James Chapman. And he walks over to like interject himself into the situation.
Yeah.
Then Samantha Strayer.
Samantha Strayer was there too. Yep. I have the video. I can't play because I'm very AV restricted right now on my laptop here. But she was obstructing the sergeant at arms. She was swatting the people that were trying to hold up a sign in front of the guy so that he wasn't, shouting at the stage. Yeah. So in the 6th district, the 6th district seating was in the middle of the convention floor. So she had to like walk all the way up the rows and rows of people to intervene in something that was none of her business. But of course it was her business because they're disruptors. That's what their business was. So
That's right. And she voted against every motion, against shutting down debate, against, everything she was on the wrong side of every single thing. And then she claims
she was texting her minions too. We got that on video too.
Yeah, exactly. She was claiming she was just trying to diffuse the situation.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Samantha Strayer, who has spent the past 4 years agitating and causing trouble, she wants to bring the temperature down now.
I liked Matt's comment in Telegram today, though. That was my favorite. When you're like, "Stop gaslighting."
Yes. And here's the thing that bothers me about it. If you develop this belief that you can sort of, as a politician or a politician wannabe, that you can talk to anybody, right? Like, so I was listening to Vivek, and Vivek says, "I talk to anybody." Yeah, but Vivek, you talk to anybody with 2 giant bodyguards next to you, for rightfully so. Mm-hmm. And Patty and I lost a friend, okay? And this guy had this problem. He thought he could talk anybody down, and it didn't work. And anybody who's following that, who says, "I'll just want to do what Samantha Strayer is claiming to do," which she wasn't, but if she was claiming to try to talk him down, don't do that. Because you don't know whether that person's got a handgun. You don't know whether that person's violent. Right next to him is a guy that spent 10 years in prison for attempted murder.
Yeah.
That's for the police and security staff and the guys, the sergeant at arms.
And Rayanne, yes, this is the ball kicker too. He's a stabber and a ball kicker.
Same dude who, by the way, Samantha worked to get as an alternate to come to convention. So not only was she defending the lunatic screaming, she was defending the 10 years in prison, convicted attempted murderer standing next to it. Great work.
Well, and I think if you, and I did participate in some of the Telegram thread regarding Samantha Strayer. And I think when you look at the timeline of events, that there was a coordinated strategy, maybe not articulate point by point, but there was clearly an articulated strategy out there to the disruptors. This is what we do when Pete hits the stage. We all boo. Because you could turn around and you could look and see where the disruptors were seated, what their districts were. and it just seemed to escalate. And I think what happened with Samantha is that she saw an opportunity to play her role in the timeline of disruption. And so she comes in. She has no background in social work. She has no background in law enforcement. She really didn't know this man except by his behavior. And she clearly was not skilled to de-escalate anything. So why would you intentionally put yourself in that environment unless your role was to allow the escalation? That's why she kicked the man's sign out of his hand, because she wanted Bob Blackmer to continue spewing his hate for Pete Hoekstra. That was her role. There it is, right there.
There you go.
There you go.
Hey, Samantha, you told me you were talking to him down and trying to get him to calm down.
No,
that's weird. You have your back to the guy. Were you talking out of the back of your hair?
Yep.
That's weird.
That was her role. She accepted that role, and there she is.
I've got lots more video, but yeah.
She didn't want that sign covering him up. So everything she said about wanting to de-escalate was an absolute lie, because the video is not lying.
Yep. I've heard she's telling people online, I know Adam was filming me. I actually didn't get that particular video. I've got a bunch more of it. But
there was at least 50 people filming that. Maybe 100.
Yeah. And it's not like they were miles away. They were 50 feet from you. If you turn around and look, you'd see everyone looking at you like, what are you doing? Make this stop. Don't enable this guy to continue screaming like an idiot.
I literally thought the guy was going to die. Like, his face was turning red. He was screaming like a child having a temper tantrum. It was deranged.
Yeah.
Well, here's an interesting thing that happened afterwards. A couple hours later, I'm upstairs. I'm at a food court. I'm getting some food, and I'm kind of deciding what line to be in. And I saw a security guard, a venue security guard. And I went up to him and I just, kind of said, oh, wow, what a day. I said, hey, what was the story with that guy that got hauled out? I mean, what was going on with him? He said, I don't know. He said, somebody told me that he was telling them that he was coached to go after the guy on the stage. I think his name was Pete. He was coached. He was coached. So now I'm saying to myself, that's why I have concluded that there was a strategic effort to disrupt, and Bob Blackmer was part of the program. When they may not have known that Bob was going to show up, but somebody probably made contact with Bob, because he's been in an Oakland County convention before, and he's blowing up, and he's been threatened to be removed. So clearly people know of his reputation, and somebody got a hold of him and said, hey, buddy, you want to help us out? Come on up to Flint. I think that's what happened.
Yep. Russ Jennings says, I noticed he isn't a young guy and thought he was going to feel very well today.
He probably lost his voice. Yeah.
It's not pleasant in the jail cell, guys. No. I'm sure he's.
Did they actually take him to jail?
Yes. I think they would have. Yeah.
Yes.
He was in jail for 24 hours.
Ugh.
In Flint.
For that, think about it, you guys. For that, come on.
And here's the thing. Is he going to get an apology from Kristina? Is he going to get an apology from Samantha? Is he going to get an apology from Jason Rogers or any of these other guys who are on Team Disruptor? No. Is he going to get his bail money paid by them? No. Either he's going to act like an idiot, have his consequences, and be cut loose, and
Yep. Well, anyway, so the Disruptors got wrecked, and in fact, Samantha also lost her race for elector. She was running for elector too, and I was happy to help out Tim King in that race. Tim, I mean, we knew this was going to be an issue, and Tim had obviously by far and away the most claim to that title, because he was a 2020 elector. And so Dana Nessel is prosecuting him. He's had his life ruined by Dana Nessel. Nobody has paid a higher price for supporting Trump than Tim King did. So we did what we could for Tim. We, showed him, here's how you talk to people. Here's how you vote. I don't know exactly what happened in the second round, which I guess we haven't gotten to talking about the second round yet. But but he had the plurality in the first ballot and one in the second. So thank God. Because Samantha would probably vote against Trump as an elector.
That thought crossed my mind, actually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Mhm.
You know, I would add just one thing that I've been speculating on that's kind of in line with what you were saying, Maggie, is I have been wondering whether or not there was actually coordination between Kristina Karamo and Craig Mauger. Because, you know, he got that golden walk and talk interview. He was in the right place. It was like he was expecting it. He was there for the booing of Hoekstra, and then he
left at 3
immediately after that and started writing his story about how Hoekstra was booed and all of the, you know, just making the party look as bad as possible. I met Craig in Milwaukee. I don't think he's a nice guy. But there's a lot of nice guys that don't necessarily have the best intentions, and he clearly does not have.
Oh, you think Craig Mauger?
Love.
Might not have the Republican Party.
And you're like, I'll take it. I happen to have sit next to him on a bus for 90 minutes back from Madison. He's a dad. Kids play soccer. Look, when you have such a fertile ground of this idiocy sells.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the disruption we had was not quite duplicated on the Democratic side.
Did he write about that?
He wasn't there. They were both held at the same time. Beth LeBlanc did. But why are people at the state GOP in Flint? Because they expect this idiocy because it's going on and on and on again. And you know what? Dragging the woman out and having her post an Instagram video about how she's been wronged and the deep state and globalists, rhino, blah, 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 blah. That gets clicks. I mean, that's a story. So, and I happen to be out in the hallway with him talking, I think sort of right before this happened.
Maybe that's the coordinator, not Kristina.
Speaking of that, we haven't even talked about Kristina yet. So if we want to talk about that, because I actually had a delegate who texted me like after the whole convention was over, who had no idea she was ever even there, much less that she had gotten her all access pass from Alexandria Taylor, which Scott that's confirmed by multiple sources, right? I mean, she clearly.
Yeah, and I actually got that confirmation indirectly from Alexandria Taylor. So, yes.
Amazing.
She explained it. Alexandria Taylor said that she actually sent an email to the credentialing committee or something saying, you know, who can I give this all access pass to? And they said, well, we don't have the ability to police it. But the reality is that I talked to somebody else who had an all access pass, and she was also a delegate. And when she was on the floor, she had to have her delegate credential also. So she had an all access credential, and she also had a delegate credential, because you had to show the delegate credential in order to be on the floor when there was voting happening on the floor. And so she was not there. She clearly was not a delegate. And I think that some of the other people that were around her were not delegates either, that they were guests also. I'm not sure how they all got down there, but they were very clearly, I mean, there are pictures of them kneeling when people were sitting, and then they'd stand up to vote. And, that here we have the election integrity, so-called queen of election integrity, as an account on X said, the left of center Michigan said, here we have the queen of election integrity for the Republican Party, illegally voting on the convention floor. And that's not an uncommon thing, by the way. I've seen that in so many other states that the so-called election integrity experts, when it comes to them running an election or interfering in an election, they have no qualms about that.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Matt shared this with me. This is the guy. This is the guy I was calling angry Chaldean guy. He might not be Chaldean. I'm just guessing. There he is.
Yes, has something or other.
Has cash, yeah.
Aeon, also known as has cash.
Yeah, he's great.
He seems great. Seems lovely.
He's great.
The thing that I want to, the connection that you want to make,
this looks better. Let's do it this way. There we go.
Yeah, the connection that you want to make, and to pull it full circle, how these people all run. Kristina got her pass, admittedly, from Alexandria Taylor. Okay, and like I mentioned before, you have these people who are put in these positions, take big losses, and are just cut off. Well, guess who that happened to? it happened to a bunch of these election integrity people who sued the city of Detroit in 2022 to change rules. Judge Kenny, who is the one elections judge in Wayne County, said this was a complaint that was devoid of fact and legal argument. And as a result, the plaintiffs and plaintiffs' counsels owes the city of Detroit $60,000. At some point, did Alexandria or Dan Hartman, the other attorney, come up with a checkbook and say, I got this, I'll pay this? No. They are all on the hook for $60,000 to the city of Detroit. So,
well, not only that, wasn't that just a few weeks before the election?
Yeah, they filed it 2 weeks before the election, demanding that election rules be changed.
And that got all kinds of negative press. And I'm sure that was absolutely repulsive to independent and moderate voters.
Yeah.
You know, they're basically asking for, as I understood it, they were asking to invalidate all of the ballots from Wayne County. I mean, that's essentially what the lawsuit was.
Yeah.
And, I mean, how that was a Democrat project. I mean, there was no way that could have possibly won. There's no way that could have benefited Republicans in any way. And, you know, and here Kristina Karamo and Alexandria Taylor, you know, running a psyop really to aid the Democrats in the 2022 election.
Yeah, if you think these guys are well-meaning patriots, then nothing they do makes sense. If you think they're operatives trying to sabotage the election, then everything they do makes perfect sense.
Well, and also it hit the floor pretty quick on Telegram and other social media outlets that Alexandria Taylor had, in fact, we knew very, very early on that she was the one that provided Kristina with the all access pass to go into the convention center. So now Alexandra Taylor, and this was before she spoke, Alexandra Taylor now was seen as someone who was aiding and abetting election fraud because she was allowing Kristina to meander about. And yes, Kristina abused it, and maybe Taylor didn't intend for her to abuse it, but she gave her the access to abuse the privilege. So people were questioning her judgment now as a judge. So that went through the floor really quick. You know, can't believe what Alexandra Taylor did. Can't believe it, allowing Kristina access to vote. Kristina didn't have the proper, credentials, but there she was. And people had pictures almost immediately of showing Kristina kneeling down and voting with that district. So it was pretty clear. So I think Alexandra Taylor, she burned her own bridge.
I had some push. I posted that on X. I had some pushback from some Taylor supporters and from Taylor indirectly. I plan to talk to her tomorrow about it. But she and I talked to the rules committee too. I talked to a couple of people about that, and they said that I asked did she actually break a rule? Did Alexandria Taylor break a rule? And the answer is not technically, but the way I see it, it's like if you invite a guest to a house party and your guest trashes the place, you've got some responsibility. And
absolutely.
She had to have known what Kristina Karamo was going to do with that pass.
Right. And that pass is for campaigning for your candidate.
Yeah, let me clarify because there's some questions in the chat about this. And actually, William Lonsbury says, is everyone aware that all access passes were coded in green and they were deceptive from a security standpoint because the delegates were also green? Yeah, so these all access passes, every candidate got 5. 1 for the candidate, 4 for the candidates, volunteers, and staff. So I got 1 for Tom McMillan and me and our volunteers. I gave 1 away just to a friend because whatever, just someone I knew wouldn't be a disruptor. But yeah, and they didn't vet who any of the campaign volunteers were. And someone in the chat also asked, what would those passes get you? You could go backstage. And that's about it, really. And they did not give you privilege to vote. Like when you voted, you still had to have your delegate pass stamped. But yeah, it was. I mean, I wouldn't say security was bad at the event, but it's an event. There's ways that people can get through things if they really push to.
I feel like the first time we came down to the floor, they actually looked at our badge and then never again.
Yeah. And I don't want to leave the impression that everybody who worked on Alexandria's campaign they were very nice, very professional. I enjoyed shaking their hands. They were very committed to their candidate. It's just that Alexandria made a bad decision when she gave that all access pass to Kristina Karamo. Kristina was not out there campaigning for Alexander Taylor and distributing literature and whipping the floor for her. What Kristina did was she used that all access pass for her own narrative, for her own agenda, and she brought down, in my view, Alexandria Taylor.
There was a huge cloud that was lifted from the entire auditorium the moment she was removed.
Yes.
It was, and I do believe that there is a spiritual component to it, because, if you go to KristinaKaramo.com, you can see right there, she's got a treatise that takes the Jesus commandment to love your neighbor as you love yourself, twisting that into interpreting it to mean you have to hate your enemy or your neighbor if they are evil. And I mean, this is it does have a satanic or a spiritual component to it, and it is very, very wrong. This is not Christianity that she is espousing, and you could feel that. I think a lot of people felt it as soon as she was out of the room.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean,
it's so weird thinking back to 2 years ago when she was the nominee, right? And she got like 75% of the vote. Like and then her speech, and everyone was cheering. It was like electric, right? She was the darling of the convention. And in 2 years, it still boggles my mind. It really does.
Well, people forget that right before the convention, her mom passed away. So, Scott, you've had a lot of stories talking about kind of takeover and control. And one of the things, if you read about this kind of persuasion, it happens often after traumatic events. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying that she had a very traumatic event, and people that campaigned with her, myself included, Amber included, we experienced a very, very different person in the middle of 2022 than we did after all this happened. So it just adds the plausibility to it.
Yeah, and Scott, you touched on this in your very first article about this whole thing, that she's been warped and controlled by Mike Labadie, who is himself a manipulator. And, in the
I think it is extremely noteworthy that, there were several emails that she sent out saying signed Kristina Karamo that were very clearly written by Mike Labadie. So she is allowing Mike Labadie to speak for her. And I think that is, to me, that is extremely significant.
Yeah.
We had another incident too where there were people removed. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. Well, and it's starting to come out. People are now hearing about it. But there was an incident that occurred. Do you remember when Dominic from MRP was at the microphone and he was talking about protect the vote?
Yeah.
So it was during that time. So this was during the first round of counting, and an MRP staffer, a staff member, was as Dominic was finishing, they had the people that were working on election integrity were throughout the convention floor, and their job was to circulate flyers about working on, protect the vote, and to scan the QR code into the phone. So one of the MRP staffers starts circulating the flyers, and she's, in the back of the room, in that back area. And as she was circulating the flyers, she goes up into the second tier on the floor, and she works her way, and she runs out of flyers. So she's working her way back down to get some more flyers to circulate. And there is a gentleman sitting there in a row. His name is Ryan Anderson. And he screamed out in front of hundreds of people a very sexually explicit name for her. He accosted her verbally using sexual language in front of everybody. That's what he did. So this MRP staffer turns around and says, "Excuse me, but what did you just say?" And he continued and he escalated his accosting of her with this very horrible sexually content. Now, Ryan Anderson is from D2 and I believe Ottawa County. So we got, doesn't it figure where we're at? So let's take a picture of where we're at. So, and we do have witnesses that observed this. And sitting with Ryan in the role where Ryan was a registered sex offender. And that individual was also an Ottawa delegate. And he was from D4. So you had this sexual offender sitting in this row, listening to this sexually haunting attacks on this woman. And Ryan Anderson was the leader of this group. So we had this going on, and sitting next to Ryan was a woman by the name of Darlene. I think her name is Darlene Dykstra. And she was sitting next to Ryan, and she chimed in. And she began escalating the sexually verbal attacks on this woman. Now, this was an MRP staffer, and this was all occurring in public. So the woman, the MRP staffer, makes a complaint to a deputy sergeant of arms, and he approached Darlene, and he said, I want to see your badge. I want to see who you are. And Darlene pulls it out and says, well, here, this is who I am. He says, no, I want to see everything. She had covered up her district and her county. And the security guard said, I want to see it all. So she took off the paper, and that's when we figured out, or he figured out, take a guess where she was from.
District 9.
District 4.
Wow.
District 4, Ottawa County. And she was sitting, we believe, I haven't looked at the complete video yet, but she was sitting behind D9 in what appeared to be the D4 alternate section. So eventually Ryan was escorted out with an understanding that he would not be permitted back in the venue because it was that serious of an attack. The sexual innuendos and the language used was that bad. He was asked to be removed from, and he walked out. He walked out escorted. Darlene, about 20 minutes later, realized she was next on the list. And so she voluntarily left. She was not escorted out. But there are other witnesses that saw the men sitting in that row fist bumping with Ryan, saying, hey, guy, you did a good job. That's great. This is super.
Amazing.
Where were they from? One of them, Ottawa County. Now, the problem is with this kind of behavior, in full view, and the witnesses are being lined up, we're listening to what they have to say. It's getting out there on social media probably sooner rather than later, is that those people in D4 and in D2, and I'm talking to you, Ken Byer, and I'm talking to you, Joel Studebaker. I'm talking to you guys, the Boys Club. What you are doing is you are feeding the Democrats a narrative. Why vote for Donald Trump? Because you see how his people treat women. You're giving them a narrative. And when you give the Democrats a narrative, especially in a state where we are razor thin, I have to question your loyalty to the Republican Party. You know what? You guys need to get out because you're not doing women in the Republican Party any favors. What went on was disgusting. And Ryan Anderson, you need to be removed from the Republican Party. If I could do it tonight, I would get you out of the Republican Party because there is more on tape of what Ryan Anderson said, and it is filthy and it is disgusting, and I will not will not stand in this party and allow that to go on. And shame on you men for not sticking up for this MRP staffer. You were there, you heard what was going on, and you didn't shut it down. What you did was you cheered the guy, you fist bumped at him, and you applauded him when he was escorted out.
The Republican Party needs to take out the trash. And frankly, I will end my association with my local party if they fail to expel James Chapman. I'll say that right now. I will not deal with him any further, period.
Yeah, I think, again, this goes back to, again, people have been told something that is wrong. And for that, the people who told them the wrong thing should apologize and repent. Another one of the things that they've been told that is wrong is that by filling out a piece of paper that claims that you're going to be a precinct delegate, that you are somehow elected to an office like you're a senator, okay? As someone came up late in the meeting and said, why haven't we taken an oath of office? And the answer is, lady, because you don't have an office. You're a member of a political party, and you are subject to that political party's rules, and they can expel you. As an example, just to make it clear, if Jeffrey Dahmer walks up and signs an affidavit of identity, do we have to admit him to the party? No, we do not. No, we do not. And I've heard it from two very intelligent people. One of them was on this thing, Patty's idea. Look, the local party should be vetting those people more closely. And if that person is incompatible, doesn't help, hurts the cause, and throw them out. Well, we shouldn't have to apologize to a guy who had a Barbie doll naked on a noose constantly. Why is this guy a part of our party? It's really simple. He's not anymore. And when we had all this pushback from these people saying, you can't remove him. He's an elected official. Like he's, like
duly elected.
Like
James Chapman's champion was Nathan Morris, who was recently murdered.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible thing. But why would you? I mean, why do we not get rid of these
Nathan
people?
wasn't alone in that.
Yeah,
No, he wasn't, but he was the leader of that effort. I was there in that district. He made the motion.
They manipulated Nathan to be the leader of that thing. I will stand by that, knowing.
Well, and there was
he was impressionable, and
okay, yeah. I'm sorry.
There was one more incident also, and this was early in the day, where there was an individual, an MRP staffer, same individual that was up at the microphone, and Ken Beyer got a little close to her. Yeah. And Ken, this is what happened. So I hope you're listening tonight. You got too close to this woman that even good, honest patriots, security men, were very uncomfortable with how close you were getting to this woman. That's why the security stepped in between you and her. So when you take your energies and you go up to that microphone and you think you're on stage, just want to make sure you people understand you're being watched, and you're being watched very carefully of how you conduct yourself around other individuals. And when that one security guard had to leave, the venue security guard was there. And let me tell you something, Ken. If you had gotten any closer to that woman, that venue security guard had the ability not to arrest, but he had handcuffs to restrain. You guys, that boys club out there in District 4 in Ottawa County, there is something very wrong that is with your ideology, that this is continuing to be a problem. So I don't know how you solve it, but I know how I would solve it. Get out of the Republican Party. I want you out.
Yep.
That's terrible.
Yep. William asks, why was James Chapman president at the convention? Because the Washtenaw County GOP hasn't expelled him yet. I hope that comes soon.
I wrote a piece on Friday. It's on my Substack about the difference between the Republican Party bylaws and the Democrat bylaws, and it comes from, just looking at Kalamazoo. In the Democrat Party, they do not, if you're elected a Democrat precinct delegate, you have zero rights. You do not even have right to membership in the party. The only right you have, it's not really even a right, is to be able to apply to become a member of the party. And then what you have is you have responsibilities. If you fulfill those responsibilities within the party, then you get rewarded with, benefits and higher positions and that kind of thing. But you don't have the right to vote is really an ancillary right that's only bestowed upon, and it's really given as a reward for fulfilling your responsibilities. And they have it locked down. That's the reason why I talked to somebody who was running a statewide campaign. He said that 35% of the delegates in the Republican Party, the Michigan Republican Party right now, are either Democrats, libertarians, or unaffiliated anarchists. And so,
we lost half of ours. I mean, I don't know if everybody else, but I numbers were down in our county. I don't know about the rest of you guys. I mean, and not because we lowered our vacancies, right? I didn't lower any of them, and I don't know.
Yeah. But the point is, it's an infiltration, and it's to what you guys were saying earlier. The party needs to step up and say, okay, we need to. Kalamazoo they have some of the best bylaws, I think, of any county Republican Party in the country. Yeah. And that's something that we need to emulate, and we need to say, okay, this is what it means to be Republican, and what it means to be a delegate is you help get Republicans elected. It's not about voting. It's about getting out there and helping get Republicans elected. And the more you do that, the more you can participate in the party, and the more, you can. There should not be anybody on the state committee that's not even a precinct delegate. This is insane. And we've got two of them right now that they couldn't even win their election as a precinct delegate, and they're still on the state committee. Why is that? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, they were told that. They were told.
Well, that's how. Yeah, they were told that. And then even.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but that's how I became a delegate. Well, and Dwayne Zantop, but I was watching War Room, right? And how many all these people got in because of the precinct strategy. Now, yeah. I didn't end up being a disruptor. I don't, but I just thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get involved. It's a good idea, whatever. I didn't know that what it was really going on behind the scenes. You know what I mean? But back to what Matt said about vetting people, I guess I really don't understand, why does this have to go through the election process anyway? Why does it have to be on the ballot?
Well, the other one to think about, Scott, is
why can't we just have people apply for membership like any club or something?
The history of this goes back all the way to 2014 in West Nakagiri. So Adam, Amber, Maggie, you guys were involved with this. So in 2014, Rick Snyder is going to run for re-election. His lieutenant governor is Brian McCallie. The hardcores do not like something that he did, and they decide they are going to go to the convention. And at the time, lieutenant governors were selected at convention, and they're going to pick somebody different just to show Rick Snyder who's.
They still are.
That's right. It would have ruined his campaign. Obviously, with think about it. It's again.
This goes back to 2010, Matt. In 2010, there was a guy at the state convention running for lieutenant governor against Brian Calley. And what happened at that convention was the room, they did not prepare for there to even be ballots. And the convention staff were like, well, we don't know what to do. The room there was a lot of people yelling for the other guy. I can't remember what the guy's name was. But then the guys who were on the stage go backstage for a while, and they come back on, and the other guy drops out and says, never mind. And whatever they promised him, I don't know what it was. No, not Dwayne says West Nakagiri. No, I'm not talking 2014. I'm talking 2010. Right. This was even further back than that. But go ahead, Matt.
I was saying, what they were told was, and the same theory is, that precinct delegates run the party, right? Mm-hmm. And then fast forward 6 years later, and we're getting these lectures he's a good guy. I'm sure he means well. J.D. Glazer was literally running around the state saying, you're a precinct delegate. You control the party. You control everything. And one thing he was telling everybody, to Scott and Patty's point, is you're not required to door knock. You're not required to volunteer for campaigns. That's not what this is. You're a precinct delegate. You run the party.
Yeah.
So county chairs were like, Well, actually, that is what you do. That's what you're
This
supposed to do.
this actually goes all the way back to 1988. This was part of Pat Robertson's campaign strategy. That's why in the state party convention bylaws, there is now a clause that says regarding county conventions, only after all of the electing of state delegates is completely finished can people be elevated to become precinct delegates. That's there because the Pat Robertson people stormed in at the county conventions and elevated themselves to the state convention. That was part of this Pat Robertson campaign strategy, which was, the nominee is not chosen by the voters; they're chosen by each state convention's delegation, and so that's what their strategy was. That is also, by the way, the strategy the Ron Paul campaign picked up on in 2008, and that's when we all discovered, because we're all brand new to the party. This is where I came in. Oh shoot. They're manipulating the rules to benefit Mitt Romney, and there's nothing we can do about it because we're not precinct delegates. And that was when we all started becoming precinct delegates. So that when the 2012 campaign came around, now a lot of us were in the party. So that's when this race, and that's when the Tea Party suddenly got involved in doing the same stuff too, to A, compete, and B, to for their own Tea Party agenda, whatever that was.
Right.
And it's been that way ever since. That's when the precinct delegate game really came into effect. But it goes all the way back to 1988.
Right. But what makes this most appalling is that this is like seeing the same crappy movie twice in a row at the movie theater. Okay, we know what happens at the end of the Kristina Karamo story, right? Mm-hmm. We know she comes in and she literally drives the ship into the water, and why any single person would not see that and say, yeah, I might kind of like the idea of more of citizens governance, but no way, man. No way can we have, hundreds of thousands of dollars missing, and you're shorting a guy to speak at Mackinac when everyone's there, and just you can't do that. You can't do any of those things. And it's not like these happened 20 years ago. This just happened. And yet we've got Samantha and Jason who are standing up, supporting her like they have the world's worst case of amnesia.
Yeah, exactly. Or that's their agenda all along.
Well, back to what you said, right? If they wanted to win, they wouldn't be acting this way. If they wanted to disrupt, this is exactly how they'd be acting. So
yeah. Anyway,
a lot of energy.
Yeah, we're an hour in, and we still haven't even talked about the candidates in the races yet. So we should maybe talk about some of the results. I guess first, let's talk about now we can get to the very, very bizarre second round of voting. So, Matt, would you like to explain why it is that Tom McMillan and Nikki Snyder got 75% of the vote on the first ballot, and yet they had to go to a runoff?
All right, so I will do my best, and there will be a letter going out to the Rules Committee with a correction, hopefully, and it says I am not casting aspersions because I've gotten two different stories from two different people about the imposition of this interpretation. Okay, Ladies and gentlemen, this is a math lesson, a fraction. Okay, there's something on the top and there's something on the bottom.
The lawyer does math.
Lawyers doing math is always a problem. Okay, so when you say how many votes did you get? Was it a majority? You have to ask yourself what's on the top and what's on the bottom. So we're gonna have a ballot here, and it's Amber versus Patty, and they're both candidates, and it's 2 for 2 spots. Okay, there are only 2 spots available, only 2 candidates, and there are 1,000 people voting. And Amber gets 1,000 votes, and Patty gets 1,000 votes. Any rational person would say they each got 100% of the vote. The math that we were using said there were 2,000 total votes, of which Amber got 1,000, Patty got 1,000, so they both got 50%, so they got less than a majority. Because the majority is 50% plus 1.
It's completely
so now what we
insane.
have to do is conduct, are you ready, the same exact vote. And then the top 2 vote getters, who I'm going to say are Amber and Patty, go on again.
It's so unbelievable because it's completely illogical. Like the whole point of a runoff is that if you vote for the guy that comes in third place, your vote, rather than being wasted or spoiled or whatever you want to call it, you get your second choice, basically. Imagine if because here's what happened. There was the race for U of M Board of Regents. There are 3 candidates for 2 seats. And Savag Vartanian came in first. You would think that the guy who comes in third place is eliminated. That's how a normal runoff works. And then the top 2 vote getters win. That should be the end of it right there. Under their weird interpretation of the rules, all 3 had to run again, and therefore everyone voted the exact same way they did the first time, unless they left. So, you would have a situation where the only reason why any result would be different is because people got up and left. And now they've been basically disenfranchised. So it completely goes against the spirit of having a runoff election. And if all of that wasn't stupid and weird enough for you, guess what the icing on the cake is? They didn't do that for the presidential electors. So in Washtenaw County, where we had 6 candidates running for elector, we had to do the same exact ballots for State Board of Ed, University boards, State Supreme Court, and then we had a top 2 runoff on the presidential electors. So not only was their rule completely retarded, it was also not even consistently applied.
Well, the issue has
Couldn't it have been that Savag should have been, okay, you won in the first round, and then it would have been Myers versus Weiser.
The difference
Yes.
the difference is the elector was vote for 1. So all the races that were vote for 1 turn out okay, right? Supreme Court 4-year, Supreme Court 8-year. Magic, right? Elector, you knew you were going to have a runoff in most places, because in most places you had, in District 9, they had 23 people put their name in for 1 spot. We had 6. Some places had 3. I think 3 or 4 districts had only like 2 people and 1 person got more than it. But it doesn't work when it's vote for 2. So you can't do that. And there's a proposal going out to amend the rule so that doesn't happen, because it only matters because if you take the same thing we're talking about with Patty and Amber, right, and you make the denominator be number of voters, not number of votes, because each voter gets 2 votes. Amber would be 1,000 out of 1,000 or 100%. Yep. Patty would be 1,000 out of 1,000 or 100%. Yep. And then you can have situations where you have 3 for 2, where most of the time somebody gets a majority, but some of the time they might be an exact tie. But the rule is robust enough that if it's 4 for 2, which you could have 1 person get a majority and 3 people kind of split, and then you have a runoff, which is the purpose of the rule. But I like I said, I talked to some people, and there was a little bit of that's not my idea, that's not my idea, and so there was a little bit of I think people wanted it to be done the right way, but everyone kind of looked at each other and expected it to be done a different way, which doesn't make any sense. That's not.
Yeah. And there was a fix, and I feel bad because it only occurred to me after this was all over and done with. But there's right before, as soon as we started hearing about this crap, I went up to the stage, Mr. Parliamentarian, is there anything we can do to not have this be retarded? And so and I forget the guy's name. The guy who was the guy that wrote Robert's Rules of Order was the parliamentarian.
Oh yeah.
And then David DeShaw hears me ask that question, so he comes up too and he says, "No, you can't, because it's in the rules." At that point, I give up and I go back to get in line to vote.
Dave DeShaw on the stage said it's number of ballots. He said it, and then somehow from that microphone to the other room, it got twisted.
But they were wrong. There was a way it could have been righted. If someone had gotten up and said, "Mr. Chair, I move we suspend the rules and just let the top vote getters in all the contests win." Yeah. And DeShaw would have said, "You can't, you're out of order." To which I could have said, "I appeal the ruling of the chair." And I'd have probably won.
You
probably would have won.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to do that second ballot.
Disruptor tonight, so
yeah. Anybody could have done that though. So oh well. So the outcome.
I am like super on cloud 9, by the way, because all of my candidates won, which never happened.
Oh, yeah?
So, and the first time in my political career. So I'm really excited about that. So
wow.
You didn't want Ron Weiser. You thought it was a bad idea to have somebody that had enough money to run a campaign.
I was not a Ron Weiser fan.
I
get it afterwards.
Are you going to contribute millions then to Savag and
I will knock $1 million.
Graduate of U of M Dearborn.
Yeah, I plunked for Ron Weiser because I don't care about the university boards. I care about Trump winning. And we just lost millions of dollars last night because they hated Ron Weiser more than they wanted Trump to win.
That's exactly right.
And I think we'll get the result we deserve.
Yep.
And I think also the relieving thing, I think, is that the Republicans can no longer claim that the Democrats stole the election.
That's right.
Because if we lose by a few hundred votes, you know what? We lost more because of spurning Ron Weiser. And I don't know. I don't know about MSU if that mattered at all. I don't care about MSU. I don't care about Wayne State. And honestly, you know, we will have most likely now we'll lose a Republican on the U of M board. If we didn't, I wouldn't care because they'll still be outvoted every time.
Well, we'll see, because Juan still cares about U of M enough to, I think, help Savah get across the finish line. I don't think.
How much is he going to donate, Amber?
Yeah.
If he's a candidate, he's self-funded. He can pay as much as he wants. How much can he give Savah, Matthew?
There are tons of PACs that could be related to it. There are ways to fund
So
stuff.
we're going to kick you out, but we want your money.
Yeah, why would he give? I wouldn't give.
Because he cares about MS or U of M. He cares about U of M.
He cares about U of M. That's why he ran.
That's why he ran.
Yeah, he'll donate the money to U of M. He's already donated tons and tons of money to U of M.
I get it. You want his money.
I did.
You want his money, but you don't want him on the Board of Regents.
I voted for Weiser. You guys are attacking me like I didn't vote for him.
You just said all your candidates won.
All of my candidates that I was on my shirt yesterday, that I was going around actually working for, won. And then my Supreme Court candidate, because this was actually my most important one. And yes, Mindy, he can win.
Again, going back to the same thematic thing, they're the same people making the same argument who say, you don't need money to win an election. Yeah. That's not true. Now, money has diminishing marginal returns, no question. Patty just had this in Plymouth Township. One guy spent money pretty wisely and had a good staff. The other guy just threw money at it, and the money backfired because people hated the message, and the message was just repeating over and over. I think he sent out 18 flyers in a township, a primary. It was ridiculous. But you need money to do this, right? And if you don't have it, you got to get it. And one of the ways you cannot get it, it's not that they beat Ron Weiser in an election. It's that they called him all kinds of nasty names. Yeah. He's a globalist. He's a deep stater. Somebody was saying he's evil. Evil? Ron Weiser? The guy that gave $10 million to the Republican Party and kept it afloat in Michigan is now evil? Yeah. Matt Maddock doesn't have a job without Ron Weiser having money to fund the thing. He doesn't get in for the first time. So, look, people are sold this bill of goods. You don't need money to win an election. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's not true.
Yeah, so, I think, the money issue is one thing, but it's more than that. It's also, I think, that they were just complete ingrates to the fact that Ron Weiser, he actually, he ran with Michonne Maddock for his co-chair. He cared about the grassroots. He funded Unlock Michigan, which is not the only thing you could have spent money on. And I saw Sharon say this. Well, yeah, you know what? Money does help in a campaign. And Ron was finance chair of the RNC. And to say, no, we don't.
The problem was that email that Shane sent on Tuesday with that flat out lie about the rules change that everybody just climbed on board. I don't think that helped either. And then in his email, he said Carl Meyer started that, or that was his source. I don't know about that, but that didn't help.
Yeah. Well,
but why would Shane put it out when it just wasn't true? It doesn't matter where the source was from. It wasn't true, period. About a rule change to protect incumbents. That was just a flat out lie.
Yeah, right before the convention, every single candidate except Alexandria Taylor had agreed to support a motion to amend to pass the rules as is. And then
I saw that email. Like, I didn't even see, and maybe it was too many emails, but I saw the header, with our logo. I just assumed that came from from hoax. I mean, I read it, I'm like, oh, okay, great. I didn't scroll down and see that they had all undersigned it. But by then it was after all those, oh, hell no emails came out, right?
Yeah.
Like it was just, but really the damage started Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. when Shane sent that note.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I think the reason I'm a little bit disturbed by the Weiser vote, an additional element, is Ron Weiser is Jewish, and to have a Jewish Republican sitting on the Board of Regents at the University of Michigan in the middle of nothing but hatred and anti-Semitism, I think it's a disgusting message that Samantha Strayer, Jason Rogers, and that crew are sending out on behalf of Kristina, because it's very clear where they stand on that issue. I read their emails and their Telegram posts. And what Ron was going to do with that Institute of Diverse Thought is he was going to fund it and bring in conservatives and Jewish scholars and allow some integration of a diverse thought to come out on that campus and learn to accept that Jews and Christians and Arabs can live together. He wanted that message out. He was a message for anti-Semitism, and they shoved it down his throat. Shame on everybody who voted no for Ron Weiser.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back.
Absolutely.
When she was,
I mean, this goes back, you guys. I mean, Matt and I started like fall of 90 at Michigan, right? I remember going to orientation in that summer, and there was like, you can't say this, you can't say that, this is politically incorrect, you can't say Oriental, you have to say Asian, and all these things. They had like this whole thing. That was the fall of 90. All right. So as an alum of Ann Arbor, like, I'm sorry, like this was huge, and this was very important. And I just think it was listening to that rumor and just, it was just not a wise vote.
But it wasn't just that though, because I like Savak. I have nothing against people that
No,
support
he was my other one. I mean, it was those two.
But the thing was, they don't know anything at all about Karl Myers.
He wasn't even there.
He wasn't even there. He ran 8 years ago and lost.
And he didn't send surrogates.
So everyone could have voted for Savak and could have voted for Weiser. They chose to reject Ron Weiser.
That's right.
And remember, one of the reasons why they did, Maggie has a good one. The other one is the Kristina people blamed him when they took over the party. He left us in debt. Not true. He did this. He stole this. He took that. All this not true.
He locked us out of the office.
Then 5 minutes later, someone walks through the open front door. Like, what are you talking about? So that group right there could not come off of their stupidity about and the lies about Ron Weiser.
And how many times did Ken Beyer put together a video, demonizing Ron Weiser? And
right.
I was holding his sign in the tunnel and Savag's. I was holding both of them and screaming, "Save my school!"
You did very good. Yes.
And then someone pointed at Savag's sign and said, "He's got my vote." Pointed at Ron's side and said, "He's evil."
That's the anti-Semitism.
He's evil?
That's the anti-Semitism that is coming out in this Republican Party. That is exactly where it's coming from.
I don't know if it's anti-Semitism. In fact, honestly,
it is.
Until someone told me, I didn't even know Ron Weiser was Jewish.
It's ignorance. No. He's being blamed for all kinds of stuff. I don't know.
No, I heard it on the convention floor. People know about it. People know that he is Jewish. Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, you're when you're following the guy. I mean, these three smug jackwagons walked up, 4 of them, Beyer and O'Halloran, led by Dan Bonamy, and he walked up and he's got his rules and a smirk on his face, and Dave Deshaw reads him the recipe, and he goes, he kind of gets the RCA dog kind of, he didn't quite understand that this wasn't like some unique plan that nobody heard about, and they just don't care. They don't care. They're going to walk back to their people and they're going to tell how everything was stolen. They were on the way up to the concession stand. One was up there. So I was checking how many dirty looks people were getting as they were walking through one to get to the places. And it's just, it's a joke.
I mean, we just have to be grateful that they didn't multiply. You know, they didn't have the numbers to multiply these precinct delegates. So
Yeah, and I
that's
think,
good.
and
We
I
should
think the other
always
thing
win.
too is, well, we now have a whip count going into the next convention.
Yes.
You know, I know who all the disruptors are in Washtenaw County. I know who their followers are in my county now. So we'll win them over, and if we don't, then we'll just say fuck it. Start a Republican club, because we're going to spend all of our money to win the election in November. And if the disruptors want to run the party, let's see how well they do.
Well, I don't know if you all caught this, but the Democratic convention was going out at the same time as Republicans. Okay?
Yeah.
They had a disruptor problem.
Oh yeah.
Group.
Really?
But what you didn't know, what you didn't read, because it's like 7th paragraph, is they rigged their vote.
Yeah.
So they had a vote of people who were there, and then the vote of the people who are there is adjusted based on what areas they represent. So imagine there being like 200 people from District 1, and then we say, wow, but District 1 doesn't have a lot of people in it, and a lot of Republican voters. So we're going to shrink that down by 3/4. And there's only 10 people from District 6, but they would have a lot of people. So we're going to expand their vote to this. And lo and behold, the people they want, excluding the Palestinian activist who they wanted to kick out one of their incumbents, that was Denise Illich. Magically the vote turned out that Illich gets a pass. It's so weird. But yeah, they had their own problem, and the party's proportional voting system. Proportional voting.
Yeah.
Saving democracy all over again.
I've got a couple quick things. One, I heard from Andy Siebold. He is the D2 chair, talking about Ryan. He said that he texted me. He said that they did remove Ryan Anderson. He was already removed from the D2 committee for that very thing because of his words against female members. He said everyone else in D2 is awesome. He's the loser, and he's no longer part of D2. But you know, he was there with his county, I guess. And the other thing is that I think is really important to note is the booing of Ron Weiser, and I think how that actually affected new precinct delegates in particular. I talked to a few precinct delegates that this was their they were just elected and this was their first convention, and even in the first district, and they were appalled at the booing of Ron Weiser, and as every single one of us should be. But, I mean, it was terrible. I'm sorry, Pete Hoekstra. The booing of Pete Hoekstra when he took the stage, and
to that thing too, though, because I would say, the way the media reported it, he was being booed so loud. Well, the thing is, because the other people, I mean, what do you do to compensate for that? There's nothing you can do. So the minority was booing, but they sounded like they were loud because everyone else was just sitting there listening.
And where the media was standing was closer to where the people were booing, because the people that were booing were all the way in the back, and they were the alternates, and they were in the concession line. That's the floor was very different.
Yeah, but I think that Pete did such an amazing job of fighting through that, and he delivered such a great message that it was a rallying cry. It was a uniting message, and by the end of it, he had a standing ovation, and he was never booed again. Every time he took the mic after that, he was never booed again. I think a lot of people heard him, and I saw that in D9, where people that had booed him initially that I yelled at, I got pissed, but they got very quiet, and they're like, wait, I guess, he does, this message of let's come together, let's win. This is what we've got. And there's 75 days. There's not time for this. Let's come together and win. And we're going to do everything we can to do that. Are you going to join me or not? And people are like, yeah, okay, let's work together. This is where we're at. And I think he did a great job. And also Kristi Noem's speech was amazing.
Yeah.
I think she could not have delivered a better speech to try to bring everybody together. It was everything about her speech was perfect.
Yeah. And I'm sure that was intended that way. That was definitely done for a reason.
Right.
Hey, but I do want to move on to another topic because I do like Amber's hat, and but I have people on both sides that were very conflicted about that race. So we should talk a little bit about the state Supreme Court race. And by the way, I voted for Fink too. I think the fact that, and I've heard people say the same thing about Boonstra as we were just saying about Ron Weiser. Oh, now we've lost the Supreme Court race because we didn't elect Mark Boonstra. So I don't know. First of all, if anyone else on the panel agrees with that statement and wants to share it, or do we? I honestly don't know. Do we have people that supported Boonstra? Because I wouldn't say. I mean, I preferred Fink. I don't know if I have that strong an opinion about Fink. But
That was the last race I voted for. And
I think that was pretty clearly the closest race, right? That was the one that had a lot, because it was a 2-for-1, right? It was one or the other. And it was one that you had kind of compelling cases on both sides. I'll bring up what Maggie sent to me, and I've heard from a couple of people. Let's talk about the worry about Boonstra. 2 worries about Boonstra. In the state of Michigan, you cannot run for Supreme Court if you are over the age of 70. Okay, Mark Boonstra is 62, which the Supreme Court cases terms are 8 years. So that's it. He would run for 1 term and 1 term only. In addition, he would have to fill, Whitmer would fill a Court of Appeals seat. However, in the state of Michigan, there are 25 Court of Appeals judges. They only sit in panels of 3. They do not have anything called en banc review, which they have at the circuit court level at the federal courts. So you cover at most 1 out of every 8 cases. So it's not that it wasn't the huge thing. The running for re-election was a big one. And the other one is, people need to understand, judges who run for office, because Michigan is odd in that we have judges actually picked on a partisan basis for certain races.
Mm-hmm.
They can't talk about everything. You can't ask them about a case. What do you think about the Michigan state shooter and liability to the local government? They can't say anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's be clear here. They love not being able to say anything, and they abuse that privilege, because you could ask them, no, don't tell me about a certain case. I just want a general idea. No, I can't tell you anything, because they really don't want to. Right. They want you to not know what they stand on anything.
With the exception, of course, of Andrew. Andrew doesn't have that restriction. Yeah. He's not a judge. He's just an attorney. He can say whatever he wants. He can say, I would find that guy guilty. Now, when you do that, you might have to recuse yourself on that case because you've already kind of prejudged it, but you're much less, there's no judicial canon of ethics impacting you when you run. And the Democrats used that last time around when they had whatever the woman's name is that ran, that wasn't a judge before. She had no experience, right? But guess what? She could say whatever she wants. So that one was very close. I think I've known Andrew's dad for a long time. He's been an attorney in Ann Arbor for a long time. Very high regard for the family. It was a very, very close decision between the two, at least for me.
Yeah. Warren Carpenter says no Supreme Court judge has ever served 2 full terms. The longest was 13 years. Well, but here's still hoping,
you can still have the incumbent status. That incumbent status is so important.
Yeah, it's so powerful because you get for whatever stupid reason they get the benefit of having their incumbency put on the ballot. So
you should explain that to everybody. Explain how that works.
It's stupid. It's just go ahead.
Oh, no, you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, they put on the ballot so-and-so is a judge already. So they just have the incumbency advantage. It's just huge. Dan Lawless says, I think Boonstra was better because when you present the options to the general election vote, it's easier for them to understand the narrative of an experienced judge getting a promotion. I don't know. Maybe. At the end of the day, mostly these honestly, I think the huge majority of voters have no idea who the candidates are. They go by voter guides that tell them who to vote for. If I'm being perfectly honest, oftentimes I don't know who the judges' candidates really are, unless I take the time to research them before I vote, and few people ever do.
We have to make them care about the judge races at this point. That's our biggest task now. It's not if who to vote for. It's to make them care enough to vote on the judge races.
Yeah. And the other thing, go ahead, Maggie.
I just wanted to tag on to what Matt said real quick on the Court of Appeals. I used to work at the Court of Appeals. In fact, I was clerk for Judge Maureen Pulte Riley many, many years ago, the Pulte family. And the judges, when they sit on a panel, it's not like all the Democrats sit in a room and say, okay, I want to sit with you, I want to sit with you, I want to sit with you. You know, those panels are picked by, I believe, the clerk of the court, and they're rotated out every so often, and it's a random pick. So it's not like, you know, people are worrying, well, oh my gosh, if Whitmer gets an appointee, you know, we're going to have another Democrat on there. You know what? Those panels rotate all the time. That you're watered down a lot in terms of a strict ideological. You don't understand
another
the process.
Democrat.
No,
It's
Amber,
still
you don't
another
understand.
Democrat.
Amber,
I
you don't
do.
understand the process. I have read more Court of
do.
Appeals opinions than you have.
Yeah.
And
That's
you don't
fine.
Amber, you don't have a clue. You're out of your work. You really are.
Maggie, come on.
Yeah, and look,
But anyway, the additional element is that lawyers and judges are a sphere of influence, and lawyers and judges like to vote for judges that have experience. Andrew is probably a very good attorney, comes from good lineage, he has good credentials, but when you take judges and lawyers that are going to have a sphere of influence as to who to vote for, they would much rather prefer to have Boonstra, because he has a written opinion record of where he is on certain issues. They know nothing about the written record of Andrew Fink. And if I'm a lawyer, I want to follow that judge. And I, you know, that's the advantage. So,
well, the thing you notice too, if you look at like who the endorsements came
I
from,
disagree.
the legislators broadly endorsed Fink because Fink is a legislator. And Boonstra got the judge's endorsements. But that didn't come out of thin air for Fink. I mean, the people that were supporting him, in fact, I saw one of his campaign operatives is someone that runs the Senate campaign operations. So it's not as if he's coming from a background that does not have political operators that know how to get the word out for him. Now, and Maggie, as you say, you know, there are lawyers and judges, but what percentage of the overall voting population are they? I mean, and this is a tough question. I can see in the chat, people are divided too.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this, you know, we kind of, as Republicans, one of our big problems is we play on principle, right? We sometimes, again, another one of these flaws is if we just put up a candidate that says all the right things and has all the right principles, they'll win. Democrats don't play that. They play blood sport. Okay.
Well,
so I need someone who's going to run for any spot to understand the blood sport nature of it and to know how to run a campaign, which is very different than knowing how to be a good judge. Those are two very, very different skill sets. And it's ridiculous that we do this in Michigan, but we do. So, and that's, again, this was a tough one. There's benefits for Mark. There's benefits for Andrew, and it was very, very, I think it was closer than any other race. I mean, Patty, you and I probably agree on it was closer than any other race that was out there.
Yeah. And
that was, like I said, all the other ones were pretty easy for me to vote. And then that one, I just looking. Then I said, I got to vote for the judge. And I went with Boonstra. But
well, you know, Fink might not have a judicial record. He has a legislative record, though, because he has been a lawmaker for 4 years. So there is that. And that is something that he can run on. But yeah, anyway, it is what it is. He's, you know, there's a comment in the chat. I have to probably search for it, but it reminded me of something that I remembered. One of the oldest, longest serving members of my county GOP said to me a long time ago, and it was after one of these Republican debates in like 2008. I'm a big Ron Paul supporter. I don't like the other guys, and he says, wow, I really think we have an amazing, excellent field of Republicans on that stage, and I love all of them. And at the time, I'm thinking, like, I don't. But that's what we don't hear anymore, and what we might need to be saying right now is, wow, I love all of our nominees, don't we, guys? Because we want them all to win, don't we?
No, you don't. Here's what you have to say now. Here's what you have to say now. You have to say, and I'm going to say this, be prepared for it at the next meeting, because I'm going to say this. Everybody that voted against Ron Weiser, ask yourself, how do you like the second Democrat that the Democrats appointed? If you voted against Ron Weiser, for example, if you didn't support having a press conference to oppose the vax mandate policy that Michigan Medicine put in place, do you think this other woman is going to be on your side on that issue? She's not. She's going to be for the 17th and 18th DEI coordinator they want to hire. So when you're out there saying, because we heard this in what used to be the 11th, we had the whole situation with Dave Trott and it starts with I can't remember his name before Trott, and the signatures were bad. It was the first signature problem.
Thaddeus McCotter. I remember his name.
We ended up with Carrie Bentivolio.
Adam knows.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So we ended up with Carrie Bentivolio, and Carrie Bentivolio runs again, and his whole thing was, well, I'm the only conservative. And same question, Adam, same question. Will you support the remaining candidate? And his answer was no, because they're not real Republicans. We said, would you rather have a Democrat? And his words out of his mouth were, what's the difference?
Yeah.
What's the difference? What's the difference between having Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House or having even Kevin McCarthy? There's a big difference. Yeah. And so now we got to ask ourselves, do you like the Democrat that you helped get elected? To Scott's point.
Wait, did Dumbo say this about David Trott? Is that what you're saying, Mark? Is that who said this about? Was Trott?
Trott. Well, no. So McCotter, the signatures got you Carrie Bentivolio, because Carrie Bentivolio had put the signatures in to primary McCotter. So after that happened, he was the only one on the ballot. I don't even think the Democrats had anyone on the ballot. You know how time flies, right? And so he got elected. Then they put Trott in. They ran the establishment ran Trott against him.
Oh, that was happening from day one. Yeah.
Right. They were like, who? Wait, who are we left with? What do we got here?
Yeah.
But he ran on that theory. The theory was, if you can't pick the hardest core conservative, whether that guy can raise money, whether that guy can complete an English sentence, whether that person can win, has any idea how to win a race, it didn't matter. All you have to do is espouse the right policies, and therefore you should win. And that just doesn't happen.
There's a lot more to Bentivolio than that, and that's a story for another night, guys, because it's a very long story. I can tell you a lot of stories about Carrie Bentivolio when Mr. Smith went to Washington. Although one story that has a sad ending is there was actually a storage room on the top floor of the Cannon building in Congress that had some leftover stuff from Thad McCotter, including the worst audio CD of congressmen trying to do a rock and roll band, and I wish I'd saved a copy of it because it was so bad.
That's right, I remember that.
But yeah, and Thad McCotter is now actually a writer, a very bad writer for American Greatness. So he's still alive and kicking. Huh. But he hasn't run for his old congressional seat back. So whatever.
Well,
anyway,
what we have to remember is no matter who won, our candidates are selected. We put everything aside, we get out there, and we get those people elected.
Yep.
That's what we do.
That's right.
We got to
do it for Tom McMillan, my guy for State Board of Ed. He was my project at that convention. And by the way, thank you so much to Amber and to Shane and to Holly, so the convention rules said that the candidates had two options, either do a video or do a speech. And then the rules said, if you do a speech, you don't get to have the walk up with the people waving signs. Only if you do a video do you get to have the people walk up waving signs. Which seemed like nonsense to me because they never did that before. But then we see Savak Vartanian give a speech, and there's guys walking up waving signs. So I run around backstage and I go to Paul Cordes and hey, the rules say this, but Savak, he's like, I don't care. Have the people walk up. So we suddenly had to get an entourage thrown together at the last minute.
You had the biggest one.
And Amber and Shane and Holly, just like, and we had another guy, Nathan was his name, who was a volunteer for Tom and me, and that was it. And somehow in like the span of 5 minutes, we ended up throwing together the biggest entourage anybody had. And Tom was backstage the entire time this was happening. We had like one volunteer that day. And he comes on stage, he's like, "Oh my God, look all these people for me!" He was blown away by it. He was really happy about that. So.
Awesome.
Tom and Nikki were of all the races, they were the ones that there was the clearest separation between number 2 and number 3. They're both incumbents, number 1. Number two, they've been absolute champions. I've been doing educational stuff since 2012 when I was first elected to the school board. They've been absolute heroes in this regard, sitting up there, catching guff from these Democrats nonstop. And remember, in 2012, it was or 14 or 16, somewhere in there was it was a 4-4 split. So these guys had to endure 2 years of literally nothing happening, and then dragging the state superintendent in saying, you can't write rules without our approval, and unless they're bipartisan, you're not going to get it. And he'd write a letter and they'd have to rescind it, and then came lockdowns, and it was a 6-2, and Nikki and Tom were absolute champions for parents' rights and getting schools reopened. And
Nikki mentioned that Tom actually got a really bad case of COVID, and he was like deathly sick for 2 months, and he still went to the state board of ed meetings and demanded schools be open and the kids get back to school.
Right.
Yeah.
He's a champ, absolute champ.
And they endorsed each other. They campaigned together. They seconded each other's nominations.
Mhm.
Man, we would have had some smoother races in the other races if they had just, the candidates had gotten together on the two and two.
They spent all their time at school board meetings.
Yeah, they've been in the trenches together for 6 years. They got to know each other a bit.
Motion second. Like, no problem.
Yeah. But speaking of that, because something kind of strange happened with Nikki Snyder, the gal who was supposed to give her nomination, Riley Linting, who is our nominee in an extremely contested state house race, didn't get in. So
What?
yeah, because the party bosses apparently were really strict about the rules, and they're like,
What are you talking?
No
Riley
problem.
Linting.
Would you like me
who
to
is-
explain what happened?
Would you like to explain, Patty?
What happened? What happened there?
So we had our convention. Riley is in Trenton, Grove Seal. Her district is, so she's in the Wayne 6th, and she is a precinct delegate. As far as I knew, she was still the youth chair, because there was never any notification. I saw that, hey, we don't have a youth chair anymore, or, unless I didn't see it, was there an email went out to state committee that we no longer had, I think, Rolla and Riley. Anyway, so when I submitted my submission form, I had, our allocation at the top, 64 delegates. And then at the bottom, just to be thorough, I put at-large delegates below. And I had them all listed: HEMA, Ed, Pauline, state committee, Jamie Thompson, state rep, Riley Linting, VC. Like, I even put a code next to each one, what their position was, why they were at large, right? I submitted my report at 12:18 on Friday, August 16th. Nothing. Did anyone say, hey, Patty, guess what? You have a mistake on your form. Riley's not at large. Nothing. So I find out Thursday that she called me or texted me something, and hey, I'm not allowed to give the nomination speech for Nikki Snyder because they're telling me I'm not a delegate. I'm like, well, did you actually resign, or what happened? Apparently they put her on a leave of absence, which now I'm like, oh yeah, duh, she was in a contested primary. Okay. But after that 60-day period, there was no further communication after that initial one. But I guess, so she's technically removed as vice chair. Well, okay, I had her on my report. I had her at the bottom. You saw it. Presumably you read my report that I sent in. No one sent it back and corrected it, in a timely manner, so we could have fixed it. Then, so Thursday, I'm like, this is crazy, that she should be credentialed. We credentialed a felon back in March, right? But we're not going to credential an up and coming
Nominee
candidate
for the most hotly contested, most winnable Democrat-held House seat.
I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe it was like a clerical error, and they wouldn't give her a credential. I took it to the credentials committee and various other people involved in the convention.
And you had delegate vacancies.
And we didn't even have a full delegation of 64. She wouldn't have taken anyone's spot.
Really?
And they would not give her a delegate badge. So she could not. So it looks like maybe they just recorded that. She did a video for Nikki.
Yeah.
I think
that was probably their workaround. I was beside myself.
So stupid.
It's
That's when they decided to be real sticklers for the rules.
right. Yeah.
Screw over a nominee
for a good person. But for,
Yeah,
Amazing.
I mean, there are things we need to improve on. Okay. And one of them is on administrative kind of precision. And then there's the concept we talked about with the rules, like, let's think these things through. Let's do a little practice. Oh, if that doesn't work at all, that's not what we expect. And we tweak it. But because we had this year, whatever, of this rudderless garbage where we were concerned about globalist, remember, there was a rewrite planned of the bylaws. Scott's got a copy of it. It's outstanding. Remember, we spent all this time that we were going to do all this craziness. So simple stuff like, can I read the rules to see if it will lead to a ridiculous, mathematically impossible result? We don't want to waste our time with that.
Dan Lawless, we also need to read what people submit and have some quality control.
Yeah, I mean, that was simply.
Okay.
Jay says you should have made a motion from the floor. Yeah, but that would have been so confusing.
At that time, actually, Jay, so we talked to a few people and they said, send Raleigh to the floor. We're going to work and we're going to get her a credential. And they never did.
There you go.
Really?
Yeah, but let's not name names.
I'm not naming names.
Yeah.
Not name names.
All right.
Go team, go! Go team, go! Let's go win the election.
Hey, yeah, let's go win the election,
I
guys.
called Stu about
Convention over.
Paula, did Rolla have a contested primary?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, who knows? Anyway, guys, so that's the convention. I would say overall, despite a lot of glitches and hiccups and annoyances, and I should also mention,
Long day.
Yeah, agonizingly long. In fact, I saw a delegate who's been a very, very, very long-term Republican activist who literally just walked out because he couldn't stand waiting in line to vote. I was like, he walks on a cane. I was like, dude, I'll get you to the front of the line. He's like, I already gave away my badge. I'm getting out of here. So there are frustrations. So it is what it is, guys. But hey, we have how many days left? I've lost count. 70 days.
For the win. Yes, Mindy, absolutely. This hand count stuff is for the birds.
Yeah, the hand count stuff is
stupid.
Yeah, absolutely stupid. Another consequence of the disruptors. Right, there you go.
People who lack capacity for basic math. It took us 6 hours to count 2,500 ballots with 50 people. There are 3 million ballots in the state of Michigan. Do you still think you're going to hand count them? Oh, by the way, the best was the fifth, which is generally a pretty well-run thing, but they have a lot of like precinct delegates are it, election integrity, and they walked their ballots up to the front, they pulled out the papers to count them. The math didn't add up, and they sent them back to the back to recount their own stuff again. We're going to do this and understand each of those areas has like less than half of a normal precinct. You're not going to do that in every single precinct at a night and hand count ballots. I'm sorry, the math just doesn't work out, everybody. I apologize, but there's 3 million voters in the state of Michigan. It doesn't work.
Well, it'll be on a precinct basis. So you'd arguably, it would be every precinct
100 gajillion
simultaneously.
Yeah.
Unreal.
But still.
50 more votes than they actually had. Unbelievable.
Okay.
They had 80 more ballots than they were supposed to, Paula says. All right, guys. Well, guess what? Time to move on, at least for now. We got 70 days till the election, so let's get to
well, let's not. We don't have 70 days.
No?
We have about 32 days till absentee
yeah.
For the absentee ballots.
Right. Correct. Jeez.
We have a month.
All right, guys. The sprint begins. That will do it for us for tonight. I don't have an outro clip tonight because at least I didn't have any internet issues, but there we go. All right, guys. That's going to do it for us for tonight. Thanks again for all you do for liberty. Until then, peace.
Bye.
Bye.